Yo, 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 what's good? Someone that's no one. Welcome back to another story mix, guys. Today, as you see in the title, we are covering bath salts. What are bath salts? Well, bath salts, I don't think they get brought up very much too often anymore, but they're probably still around in some places. But basically, yeah, they're like research chemicals or stimulants, that are sold like in smoke shops, maybe at gas stations at some point, where they're these very powerful stimulants, but to actually make it legal, they just label it off as bath salts. You know, something you put in the bath, maybe for aroma or just, I don't know, making it more cozy. I don't even know, man. But, yeah, basically, it would get sold as a dirty stimulant. And, yeah, there was a pretty big market and usage for it at some point in time. Like I said, it probably does still exist in some way, but what we're going to highlight is more so from the 2010s, as you'll see, and we'll have quite a variety here. But I'll just let these speak for themselves. It's quite intense, some of these, so yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy these. Without further ado, let's dive right into this.
Worst night of my life. I first heard about bath salts from a friend who told me the drug was similar to Adderall and cocaine. Of these two, I had only ever done Adderall, so I purchased a small container of white stallion bath salts from a drive-thru. I stuck a straw straight in the container and took a decent sized snort. No idea of the dosage. For roughly the next 2 hours, I felt great. I was speeding damn good, similar to a high dose of Adderall, but more euphoric. I felt on top of the world, extremely alert and euphoric. It was a great feeling. So great that while I was peaking, I told myself that I would have to control myself with this new drug. It was legal and thus easily accessible, and I loved the feeling it gave me. I began to think about how I will have to have some serious self control over abusing this stuff, or else I might blow all my money on it, or end up cracked out addicted. The experience took a gradual but intensely strong twist. After about 2 hours, the speeding feeling was pretty much gone. Instead, I began to feel paranoid, agitated, and odd. This was much more than a simple down buzz. Before I knew it, I had become a different person, and I can't say I was any better. It was awful. I was extremely agitated and depressed for no reason, and could not focus on any one thing or hold a single thought for more than a minute. The coming down was more intense than the high. I was biting my lips like a madman, similar to meth, I hear. I put every ounce of effort I had into trying to stop this. I would have to solely focus on refraining from biting my lips in order not to bite them, with hundreds of paranoid thoughts racing through my mind. I would start biting again within the minute. I attempted to stop biting my lips at least 100 times. I had lost control over my thoughts and remember thinking, I could see someone easily committing suicide while experiencing this. After about 2 hours of battling this indescribable paranoia, I decided to try to sleep it off. The battle continued for at least another 1.5 hours in bed before I finally fell asleep. While in bed, I remember giving up on trying to snap back to my old self. I had tried everything imaginable to return to normalcy with zero success. There I laid in bed, calling it quits, and just praying for morning to arrive quickly so that I could feel normal again, like myself. I had only gotten about 4 hours of sleep since I had to get up early for work. I felt much better the next day, but still more unhappy and strange than I typically am. I'm actually a pretty happy guy. After work, I threw out the rest of the salts, for I would never think of doing them again. The high certainly was great, and if the down buzz wasn't so horrifying, I would probably use salts every week. It was incredibly eerie. I had never felt so unlike myself and so terribly frightened, agitated, and paranoid. I lost all control on that down buzz. I have read about other people having a good time on salts and only experiencing a mild tolerable down buzz, but I do not recommend them to anybody, if that's not obvious by now. Haha. Seriously though, It was the worst night of my life, and even though it happened over 3 months ago, I almost get chills when thinking about that night. If you're thinking about trying this drug and think it may be safer, since it's legal, at least do some more research on it before you make that choice. I am definitely not the only one who's gone through the hell of bath salts. Definitely not Epsom. After the recent 20 December 10 U.S. ban on the most prominent synthetic cannabinoids found in not for human consumption loose incense, spice, I wanted a new legal substance of choice. The new DEA compliant spice products that have been available in my town have not been up to par with the old ones, including K2 Solid Sex. Salvia is fun, but terrifying even on a good trip, and is not a good choice for an everyday drug. The only kratom available nearby is the concentrated stuff, which has mixed reviews and is often claimed to be ineffective. Since about October 2010, there had been more products on the shelf next to the spice labeled as bath salts. But I was always wary of these because the head shop always had them on display next to incense burners, which were actually nothing more than glass freebase pipes held over a candle holder by brass wire. That alone held me off. Then, when the news that the primary synthetic cannabinoids were going to be banned, I did a little research and I came to believe that these salts contained something called mephedrone, which supposedly had a lot of really bad side effects and was highly addictive. So, until mid January, I held off this new legal high before further research informed me that the active chemical in this stuff was actually MDPV. And from the reports I had read, it seemed a bit less intense than the mephedrone. So I bought myself a gram. I spent $30 on the higher quality stuff. There were some as low as $15 to $20, and I had about 2 hours before I had to start my shift as an overnight janitor. Since I didn't know how this stuff would affect me, I decided it would be best to drive someplace near my work where nobody would bother me, so I opted for a Walmart parking lot nearby. Note, I want to forewarn you, the listener, that I did something very stupid by trying out a new amphetamine like substance with no means of accurate measurement, no experience with anything similar except mild stimulants, caffeine, modafinil, Ritalin, etc., or even an approximate idea of how much a dose should be. Even though everything turned out okay for me, it easily could have turned out much worse. Start. I had never snorted anything before, but I had heard of people measuring powder out by counting the bumps on a key. I also knew that higher doses of MDPV could also supposedly cause symptoms like that of MDMA and too much speed. And I had work soon, so I started out with a low dose of one fairly shallow bump. This stuff burned a little, but the pain was overwhelmed by the bitter and medicinal taste it had in my sinus cavity. After about 30 seconds to a minute, I started to feel a slight caffeine like buzz. 15 minutes in. By now, the effects had settled in pretty well. I felt alert, as happy, lightheaded in a good way, and clear minded. However, the acid drips it left me with made me gag, though I held everything down. I felt fairly happy, though definitely not approaching euphoria. I remember being very interested in talk radio at this point, and I wished that I had some place to go. 30 minutes in. This is not a drug for sitting in the car listening to the radio. I felt perky, alert, focused, and in a good mood. And I decided that I wanted to go somewhere. I opted not to go into Walmart for fear of getting distracted and losing track of time. So I decided to go to a drugstore and get some drinks, as dry mouth was setting in. 45 minutes in. Once in the drugstore, I found that I was pretty focused on what I went there for. I had time to kill, and I usually find myself browsing through the shelves of every store that I go into. But this time I went in, I got a Dr. Pepper and an energy drink, went straight to the register, paid, and left. Only upon getting back to my car did I realize that I had spent less than 3 minutes in the store and I still had almost 1.5 hours to kill. I felt restless, and I wished that I had thought to bring something to do. In order to calm myself a bit, I decided to roll a spliff of some of the new, less effective spice. About 1/5 of a gram is standard for my spliffs, and a broken Marlboro I found in the glove box. I rode in the parking lot, then went to an apartment complex next door to my work and lit up in the parking lot. 1 hour in. The spice, which takes about 15 minutes to fully set in, did very little, if anything, to bring down the stimulant effects of the MDPV. However, the spice did add minor peripheral visuals, an increase in creativity, and I got it all without the usual lethargy, cloudy head, and munchies. At this point, I realized that my heart rate was above normal for me, but still at a healthy resting rate. I got back in my car and chilled for roughly an hour, listening to AM radio. I found myself listening carefully to the words, intonation, and everything else you can possibly analyze what somebody is saying through the crackle of talk radio. I really wish I had somebody to talk to, and I kept trying to call into the station, but I was met by busy lines every time. I tried texting some friends, but found that my thumbs couldn't keep up with what I wanted to say. So I got frustrated and decided to just kick back and wait for work to start. 2 hours in. I was heading into work now, and I noticed that my heart rate was still elevated and I still felt more alert and focused than baseline, but the happy feeling was gone. No depression, just no added happiness, and the lightheaded feeling was still mildly present, but felt somewhat hollow. When I greeted my coworker and the people whom I was relieving, I found that I was a bit more talkative with them, but not intensely so. 2 hours, 30 minutes in. After the previous shift left and the building was now empty, I showed my coworker the MDPV and I decided to do another bump. I loaded the tip of my key a bit taller than before and snorted it. My coworker, who I will call M, was more experienced with drugs than I and had done coke, speed, weed, psychedelics, and quite a number of other drugs that I either can't remember or can't pronounce. He suggested that I snort a small amount of water to wash out the drips, which I did and alleviated the gag inducing drips. I started to feel the come up much quicker than before. I rolled another spice spliff with about twice as much spice as before and waited for the MDPV to kick in more. 2 hours, 45 minutes in. I don't know if it's because I was standing and moving around, or if I had someone to talk to, or if the second dose just compounded with the first one more than I had intended, but I was quite a bit higher this time around. I was talking nonstop. I found myself reading every bit of text within sight, and I did not want to sit down. This time, I reached what I would call mild to moderate level of euphoria, and felt much more mentally and physically energized than before, but I did not get the jitters or the jaw clenching that most people report. I finished cleaning the room I was in, then pulled M outside to smoke the spliff. 3 hours in. I thought I couldn't stop talking before, but after the spliff, which I wound up smoking most of, and the MDPV had time to settle in a bit, I found myself continuing to speak nonstop. But now I was jumping from topic to topic fluidly, and I was cleaning quickly, meticulously, and steadily. I found myself using words I don't normally use, and I felt like I was being even more articulate than usual. My heart rate was back up, and using a pulse machine at work, mine was about 90 beats per minute. High, but still safe. 4 hours in. The euphoria was almost gone, but my alertness, focus, and motivation had declined very little. My heart rate had dropped a bit, back down to about 80, which is better, but still higher than normal. 5 hours in. The stimulant effects were then noticeably declining, but were still significantly above baseline. I decided that this was a good time to crack into my energy drink. I killed it pretty quickly, and after a few minutes, the energy drink kicked the stimulant effects right back up, but also threw in all of the negative stuff that the MDPV alone did not do. It made me shaky, break out in a cold sweat. I had a hollow feeling in my gut that I get from being overly wired with no actual food energy. I was still talking a lot, but I found myself tripping over words, stuttering, and misusing words. 6 hours in. The energy drink had mostly worn off by now, and the MDPV was trailing off. I still felt a noticeable, however, mild stimulant effect, and I was still completely awake. But the crash from the energy drink left me feeling kind of crappy and physically drained. I also noticed that I had no hunger, even though this is the time that I eat my lunch every night. I decided that I needed to eat anyways, and I had no problem eating, but no sense of fullness either. The food definitely helped to alleviate some of the negative come down effects of the energy drink. 6 hours, 10 minutes in, and the caffeine crash was feeling a lot better. I decided to do one more bump to finish the night, which turned out to be a bad idea later on. One more in the nose, and the stimulant effects came right back up to where they were after the last bump. The euphoria was still present this time, but it was milder this time around. I held off the spice this time, but I did smoke a plain cigarette, which gave me a pretty good nicotine buzz. 8 hours in. The euphoria was gone again by now. The stimulant effects are still fairly strong, and I had finished all of my necessary work. I could have goofed off for the remaining 2 hours of my shift, but I instead decided to keep working. I wasn't even tempted to stop. I got into my flow and was working at a pace where my mind was just occupied enough to be content. 10 hours, 30 minutes in. I'm home from work, and I start to feel rather sexually aroused, a common side effect of MDPV that I read in several other reports. I started looking at porn, but I found I couldn't maintain an erection, and my arousal died off, and I lost interest. I was still feeling very alert, slightly focused, and my heartbeat was still slightly elevated. However, all of the other effects were almost baseline now. I decided to check my email before bed. 11 hours in. I cannot sleep. I need to sleep. I never have trouble sleeping at this time, but I can't sleep. Now that I'm in bed alone with my thoughts, my mind feels like it's in overdrive. I tried putting on a movie on my laptop, Fear and Loathing, but watching it just kept me up. I stopped watching the movie and tried just watching it, which normally knocks me right out. But all it did was frustrate me because every time somebody spoke, I would dwell on that one line and go on a long train of thought and then try to focus on the movie again, only to realize it was now on a different scene. I tried music, different movies, turning off the laptop, but no luck. I couldn't sleep. 13 hours in. I'm still too alert. I can't sleep. I try eating something and drinking a beer, but all that seems to do is allow me to doze off for a few minutes at a time, intermittently, for a couple of hours, never actually getting any sort of meaningful rest. 17 hours in. I finally fall into a fitful, light, and meager sleep. I wake up 4 hours later, feeling physically unrested, although I feel like I'm mentally baseline. All in all, it was a pleasurable experience. I tried following a similar dosing timeline again on my day off, and found that holding off on that last dose let me sleep just fine the next morning. I have to be careful not to forget to eat on this stuff, and the raised heart rate should be taken into account when considering this substance. Since my normal resting heart rate is about 60, I'm not terribly concerned with it hanging around 90 for a few hours. I've heard reports of people having an addictive response to this stuff, but I found that as I get closer to baseline, I feel less and less desire to do more, and I don't feel any sort of pull or urgency to do more. After a couple of more nights of doing this, I found that the euphoric feelings faded quite a bit, but they seem to have leveled out at a mild level. Also note that most other people report grinding their teeth on MDPV. However, I have yet to experience this, even though some other substances have caused me to do so. This stuff is great for getting any sort of work done that requires concentration, and I plan on testing this stuff out as a study aid once classes start up again. I prefer this stuff to Ritalin and Adderall for concentration because while they can cause me to act like a zombie, MDPV tends to make me more sociable and expressive as well as more focused. It also mixes well with spice, and I imagine that it mixes fairly well with marijuana. I can't verify this since I can't smoke weed these days for fear of drug testing. It doesn't seem to amplify the effects of nicotine, but the two go well together. This stuff is not fun to mix with high powdered energy drinks, but since this experience, I have tried it with a cup of coffee, and it's far more pleasant. I have read many reports of people doing very high doses of this stuff, and from my experiences with low to moderate doses, I would not recommend it, and I don't plan on trying it. My heart rate went up by a bit more than 30 beats per minute on these dose levels, and I can only imagine what it would do to someone with a higher resting heart rate than I taking a higher dose. I could easily see this being harmful and no fun at higher doses. For the same reason I don't recommend using this stuff daily, save it for when you want to be sociable or get some work done.
Just did a huge line of some synthetic coke. Need someone to talk to. Too long, didn't read. On synthetic coke. No, it's not the best. Want deep conversations. Disclaimer. Warning. When you hear about zombies on bath salts, it is not what I'm taking. They are on a different synthetic with either PCP properties or have gone days without sleep. Do not go on a multiple day binge without sleep or food. Water warning. Drink water. Lots and lots of water. I will also try to take you through the countdown. I'm not looking for people saying, you shouldn't buy that. I know the risk. I enjoy this euphoric feeling better than the cheap ass Coke around here. This stuff makes me talk. A lot. Gonna describe my feelings and edits after I get this post out there. Honestly, if I don't do it now, my mind will be on something else in 5 minutes, and I will forget to post this till way later. It's peak now. I took the hit exactly an hour ago. Holy shit. It doesn't even feel like an hour. Too long, didn't read. Synthetic coat makes me talk a shit ton. Gonna make edits as a journal, and even progress through the countdown with continuous edits. Took the giant ass hit exactly an hour ago. Edit 1. Took the hit at 8:55. After about 5 or 6 smaller hits, spread out since about 6 p.m. before that, Central Time. For those of you who don't know, or are lazy to figure Central, it was 9:56 p.m. or so when I first posted this. The time is 9:57 p.m. Heart is beating fast, so I know my blood pressure is lower than normal. I've done this shit before many times. I feel like I'm having deep conversations, and the euphoria is like I'm on a small boat and just going over waves in an ocean. It feels so great. I also had the usual tingle in the back of my head. No signs of being sleepy at all. In fact, I'm tweaked, and usually I'm dead tired by this time. Anyway, I feel like having deep conversations or personal ones. Ask away. Start some topics. Did I mention wanting deep conversations twice? Oh no. It is now 10 p.m. when I finish this first edit. Too long, didn't read. Took 5 or 6 smaller hits before taking one giant ass one at 8:55 p.m. Central. Euphoria at its peak here, making me feel like on a roller coaster. Feel like deep conversations. Numb tingle sensation in back of head. Heart rate is way up. Blood pressure is way down. Tweaking like a bitch. Not tired at all. Not hungry. Edit 2. 10:01 p.m. I think I should mention I don't feel like eating someone's face. Although these past few batches, the last two counting this one, I have felt hunger but cannot eat due to cotton mouth. In fact, I feel like eating, but I don't want to because I feel full at the same time. By the way, drinking lots of water to keep myself hydrated because I always pee a shit ton on stimulants. 10:03, end of edit. Edit 3, 10:03. Forgot to mention, please refresh a lot. This is where I will be writing all my thoughts. And I'm forgetting to say a lot because I'm trying to keep edits short as possible. Because I feel the need to tell you everything. Anyway, I feel like having deep conversations or personal ones. Ask away. Start some topics. Did I mention wanting deep conversations twice? Oh no. It is now 10 when I finish this first edit. Edit 4. Started at 10:32 p.m. Time has flown by, which usually happens. I don't remember where the time has gone. It has felt like I've been sitting here for only 10 minutes or so, but I've been here since 9:15 p.m. at the latest. Tweaking has pretty much stopped. Euphoria is not as strong, but still there. Head still numb in the back of my head. Love that feeling. And my heart isn't beating as fast. Still way out there and still wanting to talk. No one seems to want to. Frowny face. 10:34 p.m. End of post. Holy shit. It feels like a minute at most went by. Holy shit. Now 10:35 p.m. What the fuck? Too long didn't read. Time has flown. Hours feel like minutes. Tweaking has stopped at this point. Euphoria has decreased, but still present. Head numb, heart not beating as fast. Edit 5. Not as strong anymore. Still feel like talking. I have not moved since 9 p.m. Almost forgot to put the time. 11:22 p.m. Same symptoms, yet I have no more numbness. Euphoria doesn't seem to be there. I'm going to try and get up and see what happens. Heart rate seems slightly elevated and head is slightly light. Still down for talking though. But I think my post was made at a bad time. Everyone might be asleep since it is a weeknight. Frowny face. I should also mention I was going to make an update at 10:45, but got sidetracked by comments in another subreddit thread. Man, that's another thing. This thing makes you forget shit. End of post, 11:25. Too long didn't read. Not moved in over 2 hours. Heart rate elevated. Euphoria almost gone. Bad time for post. No one wants to talk. Frowny face. Also, it makes you forget shit too. Edit 6. Started at 11:27 p.m. So my tummy is growling. Don't think I can eat, but my cotton mouth is basically gone. So I might try and eat some fruit or veggies. Gotta be healthy, am I right? End at 11:28 p.m. God damn it, stop going so fast, Father Time. No, wait, keep going fast. That way I don't hit the countdown at like 1. XD. Someone remind me to edit and make too long didn't reads for each edit, and bold times. Actually ended at 11:30 p.m. Edit 7. Still gotta do the too long didn't read. Do it after this edit. 11:46 p.m. I forgot to mention that an upset stomach is a symptom, and can last. I enjoy the feeling for some reason. Also sweating. Not lots of it, but a little bit, like a shroom trip. My palms are the sweatiest, and I can tell I need a shower. I always have an epiphany shower after a synthetic cocaine. Smiley face. To be honest, I have figured out a lot of my problems in there. Fixed my life for the better multiple times, and always had one deep huge revelation about myself. Anyway, sweating and a queasy stomach are hardly noticeable. If you don't like the stomach feeling, drink some carbonated water. It will expand your stomach and help you burp. But the reason it does that is because the chemicals used are drying out your mucus, aka the lining in your stomach that protects you from the acid. Is it safe? Probably not. But hell, even weed can kill you if it's laced. Point is, nothing is safe. I can go for some right now. I'm not tired, but I'm not very high anymore, which always sucks. Probably hit the countdown soon. End of edit, 11:52 p.m. Too long didn't read. Sweating and stomachache are a common symptom. I enjoy a nice shower on come-downs. Come-downs suck, and I'm headed for one pretty soon. Edit 8. Started at 11:53. Bold times. Made too long didn't reads. This is gonna be a while. Finish editing bold times and too long didn't read at 12:05 a.m. Today is Wednesday, the 13th. My lucky number. Edit 9. Started at 12:06. Just wanted to point out that the first feeling I get off my first hit was within a minute. Probably less, but I didn't think to time it when I took my very first hit of the day at 5 p.m. A small hit to get me high, not a giant hit to get me fucked. Haha. Doing too long didn't read was hard. I still would like conversation and feel that everything is important to say. First sign of come down. Losing my words. Can't remember what I was about to do.
It sucks even more than the high forgetting, because you remember there is something you want to do. It's on the tip of your mind, but you cannot remember it. And 12:10 a.m. Too long didn't read. Too long didn't reads were hard to do because everything still seems so important. First on a countdown is forgetting in middle of shit. It sucks. First hit gets you feeling in less than a minute. Quick acting stimulant. Edit 10. Holy shit. It's 12:25 a.m. before I forget. I just got instantly high again, like a roller coaster. I was down, and then I'm back up. Not as high as I was, but the euphoria is awesome. Talkative again. All thanks to Vladimir Putin on Omegle. Talk to him, and bam, high again. End at 12:27 a.m. Too long didn't read. Thanks to Vladimir Putin, claimed to be on Omegle, a Redditor nonetheless. Talked to him, and I was all of a sudden really high again. Edit 11 at 12:34 a.m. I should mention that I had about 4 tabs open and they were all on the front page. XD. I currently have 7 open tabs, only using 2. Can't seem to close the other ones. They might be important later. End edit at 12:36 a.m. Edit 12 at 12:51. Blew my mind on Omegle talking to Vladimir about the universe being a single organism. Here is the screenshot. End 12:52. Edit 13 at 12:57. That peak wasn't too long. Still feeling okay. My eyes are starting to get tired, but I still feel a bit high. Probably close to where I was at edit 9. Either that, or I'm just all talked out, but I don't want to be, which is where the problem with saying no starts, at least for me. I always hate the countdown, even though it's not that bad. And at 12:29 a.m. Edit 14. Think I'm on the countdown now. It's 1:06. Forgot to mention the noise my phone makes. Well, it made me jump for the text tone. I guess it's the sun change in noise level. Don't really feel like talking. I think I could go to sleep, so I might try to lay down and close my eyes. We will see how this goes. Not sure if I want to yet or not. XD. That is another symptom of countdown. It makes you motivated, yet not motivated to do something at the same time. It sucks. End at 1:09. Also, I probably won't announce when I'm going to bed, because it will just happen. A thing I've noticed on the countdown, you gotta let things happen. Don't try and force it. Go with the flow. 1:10. Edit 16. Final edit. I have reached the max word count. Hope you enjoy reading this as much as I enjoyed writing it. Countdown will last a little longer, followed by most of the day in an afterglow. 1:46 a.m. Edit 15. Disclaimer at the start. Time is moving backwards, and past is a destiny we label as future. A Scout's Dream. My name is Mel Hoffman, and I wrote this up about a trip I had with some friends at summer camp at a young age. I thought it was very interesting and a fun story. All the names used are changed. You can include my name in the video, as I'd prefer that you give me credit of some sort. I've been watching your vids for years now, and I appreciate what you're doing for the community, educating and entertaining. When we were younger, my friend Caden and I had been part of a local Boy Scout troop for a couple years, and our summer camp in Pennsylvania was in a few weeks. We were reckless drug users at this time, and knew it would be a great time to get some fun drugs going on because we had been previously denied from spending time with each other unsupervised. All due to our failed diphenhydramine trip, during which we both were hospitalized and flamed by our parents, as we hadn't been caught before this. So we planned to bring DXM cough syrup and 4 tabs of acid on the road with us. Shortly after planning it, his mom took a screenshot of the text thread containing the plan from his phone and sent it to my parents, which landed us in this predicament. Luckily, we managed to talk our way out of getting removed from the trip, but we would be searched before departing. This left us with a week of sober camping and no fun. About the 3rd day into our week, if I remember correctly, me and some other friends were chilling by our hammocks. It was around 4 p.m., and we were skipping out on our last merit badge course of the day. My eyes widened when I saw Caden come elegantly skipping down the path to our secluded hangout spot
with a bag in his hand. He came up to me and said, "Look what I stole from the science lab." Inside the bag were some glass test tubes filled with some white shit that I didn't recognize. "Lidocaine," he explained. "You can use it to make crack." I immediately lit up with an empowered grin. Suddenly, our black friend Craigton emerges from the forest behind us. "I'll turn that shit into enough synthetic cocaine to last us the rest of the week, and if you let me keep some of it, I'll slide you some of my special psilocybin mushrooms." Caden and I had known him for a long time, and we bought drugs from him before, so we decided to trust him and give him the lidocaine. He came back to us the next day, about 10 minutes after we had just eaten dinner, so we basically had no responsibilities for the rest of the night. He handed us 2 bags containing approximately 4 grams of synth coke and 9 grams of dry shrooms. We looked at each other in shock by the overwhelming amount. We had not expected this much and knew what we were going to do that night. We split the mushrooms and took them at around 7 p.m. before it got dark outside. About halfway through the come up, we decided it would be a good idea to snort some of the synth coke we got from Craigton. I had never done real coke before, but Caden said it was very similar. Soon after a few lines off a fallen tree near our hammocks, I started to feel intense nausea. I began to have some feelings of regret, but I was distracted when our friends Carl and Jackson came up to us. They were both 3 years younger than us, but they knew we did drugs and were cool with it. They were Chinese, and they were pretty fun to hang with, so I was glad that they joined us. The mushrooms started to kick in as it got dark, which was an interesting feeling, almost like we were sure something bad was going to happen, because the sky was getting darker and the ground was getting longer. It was completely dark now, and all the coke was gone. I'm sure we didn't take it, but somehow it was gone. Our friends' faces were bending, and it was pretty weird. Suddenly, Hayden had an alarming realization. He started rambling about some mushrooms he found in the woods earlier that day that supposedly get you high. He called them space mushrooms and insisted that we go pick some and smoke them. The ground was a moving conveyor belt that we were floating above. I felt like I had little control over the direction I was going, like a slow, flat roller coaster that was following Caden. We stopped at a patch next to a big tree that was littered with tiny mushrooms that were orange all over. He had us pick all of them out of the patch and put them in the bag. I don't remember the logic behind most of our decisions at this point, but that was when it started to get weird. We grabbed some ferns that were drying on a large rock in the river, and we were upset when we realized we had no rolling papers. We then went to a younger kid's tent and sold one of his blue merit badge cards. It was the swimming merit badge. We wrote out the ferns and the mushrooms in the card with some of the synth coke sprinkled in that Caden had in his pocket. Me, Caden, Carl, and Jackson all passed it around. Carl was foolishly having a massive coughing fit as we saw a flashlight being carried in our direction. This was when we knew we were fucked. It was the scoutmaster, Mr. Carlfield, and Carl was still coughing uncontrollably. He heard us and yelled, "Hey!" and we began to panic. We put out the marriage badge blunt and started walking down the path, pretending like nothing happened. It was around 11 p.m. at this point, and our curfew was 10:30. He started running towards us. Jackson was hiding behind a tree, and I couldn't find Caden. Mr. Carlfield came up to me and Carl and grabbed us each. He had us by the neck under each of his arms. "I don't know what you guys are up to," he whispered, panting and out of breath, "but you have to get back to the tents, and if you tell anyone about this, you're out of the troop." He started reaching his hands down our chest. Keep in mind, Mr. Carlfield was about 6'4" and probably weighed over 250 pounds, so he was a lot bigger than us. I asked him what he was doing, and he put his hand over my mouth. This allowed Carl to escape, and he ran away. I looked back at him and noticed Caden unconscious, laying on the ground with a bunch of synth coke on his face. My body filled with fear. Mr. Carlfield's hand brushed down my stomach and into my pants. It felt like a million hands of Satan were invading the temple of my body. I couldn't believe it. After about 10 minutes of being molested, I got back to the hammocks. Caden, Carl, and Jackson were all there, and I was excited to tell them what happened and that everything was okay, besides my emotional security. They told me that the mushrooms we had smoked was a poisonous fungi called Omphalotus alarius, according to a Google search. We all started to freak out, especially me and Caden, because trees were growing out of our friends' eyes and ears.
Also, the sky was melting, and the trees were the only thing holding it up. We calmed down and just chilled at the hammocks for the rest of the night. Did some more of that scent coke, returned the half-burned merit badge application to the Jewish kid we stole it from, and slipped the rest of the orange mushrooms into the Lucky Charms in one of the other troops' trailer. Overall, it was a good experience. Smoothest, least uncomfortable analog. APVP Oral Experience. One evening, a Vulcan man was bored. He wanted to test his ability to keep control of his mind. Since he was just finishing a PvP match, he decided to try the substance. Setting/environment. Tuvok said he would take his usual preferred dose to start. No other substances were taken simultaneously. Last night's Vulcan incense had completely worn off. In his quarters, he laid on bed at home with cats in and out of the room. Parents sat across the house. Threat. Not hungry, but only ate lightly. One snack immediately before starting. Measured 250 milligram doses with empty capsules enclosed. Logical. Previously had confirmed his Vulcan physiology was not allergic and will live long and prosper after the test. Begin. Start. Washed down the 2 capsules together with a glass of lemonade. Laid back and waited patiently with Voyager on in the background. Moderate mood lighting. Curious. 20 minutes in. Can taste in breathing that the capsules have begun to dissolve. Mental. Very mild, but steady increase in awareness and euphoria. Almost like 4-MMC, but far more gradual. Physical. Proportional increase in feeling cold and veins less visible under skin. Tuvok allows it to build. Current summary. Optimistically. Impressive. 40 minutes in. As he suspected the peak to be close, Tuvok added roughly zero point 0.2 milligrams to a 3 milliliter e-cig tank and proceeded to enjoy. About 1 milliliter was vaped on with 40 watts with an 0.39 ohm coil. Janeway was furious. Notice. Vape tastes bland, not bad. Feels gritty on inhale, but is having a notable impact on the come-up rate. Returns the room to warm up before evaluating effect as it's freezing outdoors. 1 hour in. Mental. Floating slightly, mood lifted, and the idea of a kitty to pet is very tempting. Similar, but not as intense, about 40 to 50% as the come up on 4-MMC. No agitation, discomfort, or paranoia. Come up leveling off now. Physical. Hand got numb off only a little pressure. Mild shakiness. Tuvok's parents are back and forth. Close by, but unlike with cocaine hydrochloride, it does not cause them to panic as they get closer. Current summary. Mellow. Tuvok would like to emphasize that this is the closest cathinone to his preferred, long-lost 4-MMC. Euphoria comparison. He used to do 2 grams every weekend orally, and this come-up peak of a gram is approximately 66%, but tolerance to cathinones is probably 50% of what it was when he used 4-MMC. APVP equals 0.5 times 2/3 times parentheses 2 times 4-MMC, end parentheses. APVP equals 1/3 times 2 4-MMC equals 66% effect per gram. Summary, APVP equals 0.66 times 4-MMC. 3 grams APVP does not equal 2 grams 4-MMC. 1 hour 30 minutes in. Yeah, that took Tuvok 30 minutes to apply this logic in his current state. Almost wants to try the maths, something crazy like counting the ticking of the universe in intervals of mass. Instead, F minus time and drawing it. Anyway, sorry, Vulcans love puzzles. Tuvok is writing this as he goes. No further report at this time. However, he is losing the cold feeling and very, very gently and steadily sliding from his peak back down over. Feels to be about an hour from finished. 1 hour, 45 minutes in. Vaping again, and finding some problems to solve with numbers as the urge is overwhelming. 2 hours, 20 minutes in. After finding the ratio between pizza per inch per pound between square and circular pizzas, Tuvok is pleased and things are leveling off. No come down, no hearing stuff, and things are leveling off. Normally always do from other substances. Ready to lay down, he thinks. Overall evaluation, duration, roughly 2 hours, 45 minutes from the swilling and pilling with lemonade. Very worth the money. Mental. I'd split this into good and bad, but bad would be empty. Euphoria/time was very smooth, up and down. Stim effects were so overpowered by euphoria, Tuvok determined them irrelevant to this scenario. No paranoia or parental movement. Love this. Become a mathematical prodigy for an evening. Physical. Good. No stiffness, mild jaw motion, temperature changes small, no chest issues. Tuvok's heart rate was fine throughout, or at least didn't worry him enough to measure it. Bad. Strange random occurrences of blood flow issue in left arm, leading to tingly fingers until Tuvok focused on it, keeping it unobstructed. Summary. This is generally the smoothest, least uncomfortable analog Tuvok has tested since the 4-MMC ban. It was so much so that he bothered to share this with you. Thirsty now. Reported dose 100 milligrams, oral purity, questionable.